They watched from Cairo, from Iran, from Riyadh, from Ankara. Fires at the skies over Gaza. Cries echoed through shattered mosques. Hospitals turned into graveyards. For every image broadcasted, a million hearts in the Muslim world clenched in pain, rage and helplessness. It was not the first time. But something was different now. The silence that once echoed through Muslim capitals began to crack. And the world asked the question aloud, will the Muslim nations finally unite against Israel? For decades, unity was an elusive dream. Betrayals, rivalries, sectarian divides, and foreign interventions poisoned the well long before any alliance could form. Arab nationalism fought with Islamic identity. Sunni suspicion of Shiite ambition fractured potential coalitions. Economic interests with the West held back any bold collective action. One by one, leaders signed peace deals, normalized ties, and buried the Palestinian cause under trade agreements and diplomatic smiles. But now, with every Israeli missile hitting civilian shelters and every mosque turned to rubble, the pressure rises again. Streets across the Muslim world erupt not with celebration, but fury. Protesters storm embassies, burn flags, chant slogans not only against Israel, but against their own governments. Their message is clear: no more lip service, no more silence, no more betrayal. In Pakistan, parliamentarians clash over the military's silence. In Turkey, Erdogan gives fiery speeches, but the people demand action, not just words. In Iran, officials meet in underground bunkers, drafting plans for proxy escalation. From Malaysia to Morocco, the call for unity no longer echoes only from pulpits and student groups. It is now shouted by generals, intelligence officers, and billionaires. But unity, real unity, is dangerous, because if it truly happens, it would rewrite the entire balance of global power. The Gulf monarchies, long allies of Washington, now face unrest not seen since the Arab Spring. Billions in oil wealth remain parked in Western banks, but the people no longer care. They want to see weapons, alliances, consequences. Qatar quietly finances resistance media. Saudi Arabia, though cautious, begins discussing pan-Islamic military drills. And the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, irrelevant, starts meetings with rare urgency. The Israelis see the shift. Mossad files report increased collaboration between Hamas and Hezbollah. A spike in encrypted traffic from Sudan and Algeria is noted. Satellite images show joint exercises between Iranian and Iraqi militias near the Jordanian border. Egypt, historically a mediator, increases tank movements near the Sinai. The US watches nervously. For decades, it controlled the region's red lines. Now the lines blur. Jordanian pilots refuse to participate in joint missions with Israel. Moroccan ports delay Israeli cargo ships. Turkish drones, once exported for profit, are now rumored to be diverted for conflict preparation. Behind closed doors, American generals warning if Muslim unity forms even partially, Israel will be overwhelmed. But still, obstacles remain. Sectarian tensions are weaponized by foreign powers. Media disinformation sows mistrust. Intelligence operations target leaders who speak too boldly. Within the Muslim world, alliances shift with the hour. Pakistan and Iran distrust each other. Turkey and Saudi Arabia compete for influence. Egypt walks a tightrope, wary of repeating past mistakes. Unity seems just a fantasy, yet history teaches us that empires fall not from foreign invasion, but from internal pressure. And today, pressure grows in the form of a new Islamic consciousness, a pan-Muslim awakening fueled by pain, injustice, and shared memory. A young boy in Indonesia sees a video of a girl in Rafah dying in her father's arms. He prays and shares it to millions. A woman in Tunisia holds up a sign saying, "Either our leaders unite or we replace them." In Nigeria, youth stormed the streets with Palestinian flags, demanding their president take a stand. Across the Muslim world, the ground is shaking, not with tanks yet, but with truth. And that truth is this: Israel's actions, once protected by the silence of divided Muslim states, now threaten to become the catalyst for the very unity it always feared. Will these nations rise together? Can 1.9 billion voices find harmony against the echo of a single state? The answer lies not in foreign embassies or think tanks, but in mosques, in refugee camps, in marketplaces, in universities, and in the boiling streets. Because this isn't just about politics, it's about dignity, about centuries of humiliation, about erased histories and stolen futures, about generations who have tasted betrayal too many times. The youth don't just want unity, they demand it. They don't just see Palestine as a map, they see it as a mirror. And the question remains suspended in the air, growing heavier with each passing day. If the Muslim nations unite, not in protest, not in prayer, but in policy, military, and strategy, what would happen next? Would Israel survive the shock? Would the West intervene once again? wants to break the bond? Or would this finally be the moment when the Muslim world reclaims its collective spine and stands, not as scattered states, but as one force? Because in the shadows, in bunkers, in boardrooms, in barracks, and in minarets, preparations are no longer whispers, they are plans. They are possibilities. They are warnings. And soon, they may become reality. The tremors are no longer hidden. In Jordan, whispers grow into conversations among military officers. What if the Hashemite kingdom were to break from its quiet cooperation with Israel? The Palestinian majority within Jordan demands bold moves, not half-hearted condemnations. Their frustration builds pressure from within, shaking the very foundations of a monarchy that has walked a fine line for decades. The king watches carefully, his hand hovering near a path that could redefine the kingdom's destiny or destroy it. In Turkey, President Erdogan doesn't hide behind subtlety anymore. His rhetoric sharpens, his posture stiffens. He hosts emergency summits, not just with Muslim leaders, but with commanders, economic planners, and media executives. Turkish drones and arms factory increase production, not for export, but for something far more significant. The question isn't whether Erdogan wants a united Muslim stand. It's whether others will follow his lead or undermine it. Iran, hardened by sanctions and emboldened by its axis of influence, sees opportunity. Hezbollah is already on alert. Iraqi Shia militias coordinate more frequently with Quds force advisors. Iranian generals push for strategic unity, not religious division. Let sects die, Palestine live, one commander declares. Tehran broadcasts this message across Shia and Sunni lines, trying to bridge a century-long divide that has fractured unity time again. Pakistan is caught in a storm. The streets roar with protest, but the generals remain calculating. They know what real unity entails. Nuclear responsibilities, diplomatic backlash, economic risk. Yet within the army, younger officers question, the old guard's caution. Why do we always talk of Muslim Brotherhood and never act on it? Why does Pakistan possess one of the most powerful armies in the Islamic world if it won't use it when Palestinians are slaughtered? Behind closed doors, extraordinary meeting is proposing not a UN forum, not an Arab League session, but something unprecedented, a military enclave involving Pakistan, Iran, Turkey, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Qatar. They meet neutral territory, no cameras, no press, just military planners, national security heads, and intelligence chiefs. What they discuss stuns even their own aides. Joint defense pacts, economic sanctions against states aiding Israeli operations, coordinated cyber operations, shared satellite surveillance. They speak of moving beyond emotion, beyond outrage, towards strategy, towards consequence. This is not about war, one Turkish official states. This is about creating deterrence the West cannot ignore. In Riyadh, the ruling elite panics. Saudi Arabia has walked the tightrope of Western alliance and Islamic legitimacy for decades. But the war in Gaza burns hot, and the people are no longer impressed by Vision 2030 when children in Khan Yunis are buried in rubble. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman calculates the risk. Behind his charm offensive lies a nervous reality. If the kingdom is seen as complicit, it could spark an internal crisis. Religious scholars begin circulating fiery sermons once suppressed. Protesters carefully test the limits of the regime's tolerance. The silence is cracking. Across Africa, from Senegal to Sudan, the pulse of solidarity beats louder. Algeria offers logistical support. Tunisia sees mass protests that paralyze major cities. In Somalia, a war-torn country, even militias declare a symbolic ceasefire to join voices in condemnation. Libya, long fractured, finds rare agreement among rival factions. The blood of Palestinians is sacred. It must be defended. But talk is not enough. The world has heard words before. Makes this moment different is the convergence of action. Muslim economists propose a parallel trade system, cutting out Western dependence. Cyber units from Pakistan and Turkey run simulations to disable Israeli infrastructure. Iran deploys long-range missile systems closer to Israel's reach. Egypt, once the bedrock of Israeli-Arab peace, now limits intelligence cooperation with Tel Aviv, while its people demand more than neutrality. They want resistance. Israel senses it. They increase Iron Dome interceptors. They reach out to Washington with an unusual tone of urgency. They demand increased funding, more weapons, more intelligence cooperation. The Biden administration responds with caution. War fatigue runs deep in Washington. A united Muslim response would not be easy to counter. Public opinion in America itself begins to shift, especially among younger generations increasingly sympathetic to Palestine. American generals draw contingency plans not for war, but for containment. Because if this fire spreads, no alliance, no treaty No aircraft carrier will be enough to put it out. And yet, even with this rising tide, the shadows of betrayal lurk. Some leaders are approached with promises. Western aid, IMF loans, personal guarantees of security if they sabotage the unity movement. Intelligence operatives from foreign nations infiltrate activist groups, spreading doubt. Stories are leaked to discredit key players. Some of the proposed alliances begin to fracture under the weight of mistrust. Age-old rivalries resurface. The CIA leaks documents accusing Iran of using the unity movement as a cover for regional dominance. Turkish officials are accused of seeking an Ottoman revival. In Pakistan, false flag operations try to incite sectarian riots. The momentum slows, but it doesn't die because something deeper is moving now. It's no longer in the hands of kings and presidents, in the hearts of ordinary people, people who refuse to look away, who are building alliances not on paper, but in action online through funding, organizing, pressuring, and dreaming. What rulers fear most is not war. It's losing control of the narrative. In Indonesia, the world's largest Muslim country, mass rallies spill into the streets for weeks. Their parliament begins formal talks to ban all trade with Israel and countries supporting its assault. Malaysia offers to host peacekeeping troops in Gaza. If invited, Morocco debates ending security coordination. Kuwait warns of a parliamentary revolt if the emir doesn't cut ties. Syria, long weakened by war, proposes using its remaining missile capacity to support Palestinian factions. This isn't just symbolic anymore. This is a shift in the global order. And if the Muslim nations unite, even imperfectly, even partially, it sends a signal not only to Israel, to every power that believed this region would forever remain fragmented and dependent. For the first time in a century, the dream of a unified Muslim front is not laughed away as naive, because unity means power, unity means leverage, unity means consequences. As the storm brews, all eyes turn to the battleground where this unity could either be born or buried. Palestine. The West Bank trembles under an iron grip. Gaza bleeds by the hour. But what's changing now is not only the desperation of Palestinians, it's their coordination with forces far beyond their borders. Messages coded in prayer times, weapons routed through hidden tunnels, fighters trained by groups backed by Muslim nations now no longer operating in isolation. Hezbollah in Lebanon doesn't just issue warnings. It launches precision strikes on Israeli outposts in the north. Syrian airspace sees an unusual increase in drone activity. Some are intercepted, some are not. Israel's once challenged dominance over the skies starts to falter. It's not full-scale war yet, but it is pressure. And that pressure is growing unbearable. In Tel Aviv, emergency meetings are held. The Israeli cabinet debates striking Iranian targets in Iraq and Syria. The problem is doing so might ignite exactly what they fear: open, unified retaliation. A misstep could trigger a reaction not just from terror, but from Ankara, Islamabad, and even Cairo. And while Egypt has kept its distance publicly, it cannot ignore the rage boiling in its streets. Meanwhile, media across the Muslim world undergoes transformation. Networks once muted begin broadcasting the reality on the ground, uncensored, unfiltered. Graphic images of children pulled from rubble are followed by interviews with resistance leaders, Arab thinkers, African clerics, Turkish generals, and Pakistani strategists. The message is no longer fragmented. It is synchronized. They thought we'd stay divided forever. They were wrong. There were OIC, once dismissed as toothless, calls for a special emergency council. But this time they arrived not with paperwork and posturing. They arrived with plans, blueprints for economic coordination, military standby forces, a digital platform to monitor Israeli movements using crowdsourced and satellite intelligence, a diplomatic initiative to flood the UN with resolutions, campaign to isolate Israel internationally, not through war alone, but through lawfare, trade, finance, and influence. And still, Israel strikes harder, believes that through escalation, it can break the spine of this rising unity. That with enough fire, Gaza will be silenced, Hezbollah will retreat, Iran will think twice, and Turkey will back down. But what they don't expect is the opposite. The more they strike, the more the Islamic world draws closer. Sudan, newly recovering from internal conflict, announces a defensive alignment with Iran. Afghanistan's Taliban government, though internationally unrecognized, declares any Israeli air violation in Muslim airspace would be met with resistance. Even in the Balkans, Bosniak leaders issue sharp warnings about Islamophobia growing hand in hand with pro-Israel rhetoric. In London, Paris, Berlin, protests swell with hijabs and keffiyehs. Second-generation Muslims flood the streets. We are not silent. We are your voters. Hear us or lose us. Western governments, long comfortable with blind support for Israel, find themselves under pressure they didn't anticipate from their own citizens. Within Washington, alarm bells ring. The Pentagon drafts internal assessments. One report leaks should regional alignment of Muslim powers proceed, the US will face severe limitations in conventional response without risking multiple flashpoints from East Africa, Southeast Asia. Back in Jerusalem, Israeli officials dig deeper into cyber warfare. They launch misinformation campaigns, planting stories in media, creating division through fake communiques. Turkey is only doing this for regional power. One fake leak claims. Iran seeks to hijack the cause. Another says, but now the Muslim world is watching carefully. The era of blind manipulation is fading. Pakistani and Turkish cyber units fight back, exposing false media narratives in real time. Iranian intelligence warns of foreign operatives attempting to sow sectarian divides. For every attempt to divide, there is now a counter move to unify. The reflex that once tore the Muslim world apart has become a new muscle, resistance through unity. And amid all of this, one country remains the wild-carding Saudi Arabia. The kingdom holds influence no one else does. Control of the two holiest sites in Islam, a massive oil economy, and a unique position between East and West. MBS faces the decision of a generation: join the unity movement and risk Western wrath, or stand apart and risk internal revolt. He chooses neither for now. Instead, he calls a global Muslim summit in Mecca. The location is symbolic, the world watches. Delegates from 50 Muslim majority countries attend. Streets around the Grand Mosque overflow with slogans. Palestinian flags wave beside banners of Islamic unity. In a carefully worded speech, the Crown Prince declares, "The time has come to speak with one voice. We will no longer allow the Ummah to bleed in silence." But what does this unity mean in practice? All countries agree on the next step. Some want full-scale military action. Others demand sanctions and isolation. A few prefer global legal proceedings. For the first time in history, they agree on one thing: the era of silence is over. They create a pan-Islamic emergency response command. They agree to cut off all intelligence sharing with Israel. They move to suspend trade relations with states funding Israel's war machine. They initiate plans to launch a joint satellite for defense monitoring. Some even suggest a single Islamic currency to bypass dollar dependencies. Western leaders respond in disbelief. They call it a step backward. They say it's a polarizing. The Muslim world doesn't this time, because for the first time, their unity is not about reacting to a massacre. It's about preventing the next one. Inside Gaza, the people watch the skies not just with fear, but with a strange, unfamiliar feeling: hope. Not naive hope, not fake promises, but real change. A sense that the outside world is no longer just posting hashtags. They're organizing, they're building. The Palestinian resistance grows more organized. Factions, once splintered, now share intelligence. Aid finally flows, not just in the form of food, but defense equipment, drone jammers, communication tech. Gaza becomes not just a target, but a symbol. And the ultimate fear of Israel begins to materialize. Not the fear of war, not the fear of rockets, but the fear of a united, coordinated, and rising Muslim world that refuses to play by the rules written in Washington and enforced in Tel Aviv. This isn't the end of the conflict. It's the beginning of a reckoning, one that may redefine the global order, one that asks a question the world has long ignored. What happens when 56 nations finally decide they are one? And as the world holds its breath, one truth rises from the ashes of silence: if the Muslim world truly unites, not even the weight of history will be enough to stop the storm that's coming.